Well, what about the claim that, Paul maybe just had a vision, these other people might have been hallucinations? Surely that's possible. After all, grieving people have hallucinations of people they love. But again, we've got a number of pointers that suggest that's not really possible. First of all, the tomb was empty. Now, this is something that, again, the historical evidence for is very strong. The quote that's on the slides, again from Michael Grant, says, "The historian cannot justifiably deny the empty tomb. If we apply the same sort of criteria we would apply to other ancient literary sources, then the evidence is firm and plausible enough to necessitate the conclusion that the tomb was empty." So if you look at it fairly as a historian, this seems to be one fact that we have to agree on, because nobody denied it. Nobody was able to point to the tomb where Jesus' body was, and it was a named tomb in keeping with the burial practices of the Jews at the time in Jerusalem, where the body had been laid, and the idea was that the people who loved that person could come back a year later and take the bones after the flesh had decayed and keep those bones in a jar. So the details that are there fit with the culture of the time. Nobody could point to the tomb. And the disciples and the opponents of the disciples knew which tomb it was. Sometimes people say maybe they went to the wrong tomb. But we know who owned the tomb, Joseph of Arimathea. The disciples knew whose tomb it was, but the opponents also knew. They put a guard on it. They put the stone there. They knew where it was. If the disciples had gone to the wrong tomb, then the opponents could easily have gone to the right one. But secondly, there are many appearances. We saw that in what Paul said. And they are to individuals and to groups, small and large. That doesn't fit with the pattern of hallucinations in grief. Okay, you can get mass hysteria and so on, things like that. But this idea of different individuals and different kinds of appearances, and Paul, last of all, in a unique way as well. There are so many corroborating pointers to that. But also the way those appearances are described, the details that are included in them, and the nature of those are quite distinctive. And particularly it is emphasized in those accounts that it was a physical appearance. That's most obvious in Luke 24, the verses that are on the slide. But it's also there later in Luke and in John's accounts. Jesus encourages them to check out, touch me, feel. He eats and says, "Can a ghost do these things?" So again, all of the accounts suggest that these were not just visions. They don't fit the pattern of people who have hallucinated.